May the truth be told, I was down bad, now I got it on go. Finna count my dough till my thumb got slit. Put my neck on glitz, put my name on the list. Finna shine on the...
Hello and welcome to the Long Call podcast. So today, a couple of weeks ago actually, I had James on and we were talking about the andropause. We were talking about the male sort of menopause, if you like. And I decided to even up the score really. And Claire's obviously joined the podcast now. So we had a really interesting chat with Jen, didn't we, about the menopause and the outdoors. What was without giving too much away before we hear it, what was probably the biggest takeaway from this podcast for you?
The actually talking about it is really, really important, not just for someone that is going through it, but actually for the rest of kind of the human race around us, because you men have to deal with us, and it's about understanding and being understanding, and then we have to go through it. And there's so many women that either don't know what they're going through, or the younger generations that haven't an idea what they're going through or about to go through. So talking.
It was quite interesting. Now she says in this podcast as well, sort of the old ways of thinking of going through the change and all that. And I can remember, I can remember probably being a young sort of 8-9-year-old kid and hearing my mum talk about the change and like, the hell's this? You know what I mean? But and that was probably the only time it was ever sort of talked about. And and I don't know now. I sort of look back at my parents now. My parents were quite old when they had me. My dad described himself as a 48-year-old sex maniac because he was 48 when he had me. But yeah, and I look back on my dad, and he looked really old, and he certainly wasn't doing the things I'm doing at my age now. But there just wasn't the openness, was there, to talk about the menopause or mental health or anything like that back then.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, lo and behold, one of my dad's friends, even last week, so a gentleman in his 70s, was like, "Oh, so when are you having children?" And I just turned around to him and I went, "That time's gone for me." And he's like, "You're going through the change." And I was like, there we go. So yeah, it is. It's very much a generational thing.
It is, and it's great that we've now got outdoor leaders like Jen, who's a lowland leader out there in Kent as well, sort of leading the charge on this. And yeah, it like I say in the podcast, it's now it's commonplace in a lot of workplaces that you've got support within there for women going through the menopause as well. But I think bringing it out as well into the outdoors and allowing women to get together and chat about it is can only be a positive thing.
Yeah, providing that safe space.
Exactly. So, without further ado, let's get over to our chat with Jen. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast with myself and Claire. Today we've got Jenn Phillips with us. Now, Jenn Phillips is a lowland leader based down in Kent. Is that right, Jen? You're down that sort of way?
That is correct. Hi, yes.
Yeah, and I became aware of Jen through the Mountain Trainer magazine, and she did a great article on embracing change and the power of walking through menopause. So I'm probably the odd one out here. But I think it's really important that I think over the past few years there's been a lot more awareness raised around menopause. Both letting those guys know a little bit more about what it sort of entails. And you went through the menopause quite early, didn't you, Jen, in your life?
I did, yeah. I was around, it's all a blur, literally, the brain fog. I was around 20, 21, 22. It's very early. I was put into a medically induced menopause, completely incorrectly. It now turns out there's a bit of medical negligence thrown in there for good measure. But yeah, it definitely gave me a good experience that not many people my age do have, thankfully, or definitely my peers weren't having at the time. So my mind shift sort of changed very, very quickly, and I sort of saw a whole new world that I wasn't aware was happening. Like you said, there's been a bit of a shift recently in recent years of talking about it openly. But whilst I'd like to pretend when I was 21, that wasn't that long ago, it was a little while ago. And it wasn't talked about. You just believed what you were told in your 5-minute appointment with your doctor and hope for the best. So it was a bit of a stab in the dark. But yeah, I was very young, unfortunately, but it's led me on to this, which is good.
So for me, what is the menopause, and why is it important that we're now talking about it?
Oh, it's so important. Yeah. So, and whilst we are just talking about it now, obviously, the vast majority of people, sort of half of the population, have been going through it for forever. So it's essentially when your periods stop is the nice and easy explanation of it. It's your hormone levels changing. Now, for some women, that's a nice, easy breezy process. Some people talk about it as, oh, I barely knew it happened. For other people, it is life changing. Job losses, divorce rates go up, horrible things like suicide rates increase. It can be a very small portion of someone's life, and it can also be 15 years of pain, and it can sliding scale, as with anything. So it can be really debilitating for some people, and it's really good for those lucky ones who talk about it as a very small section of their life where they didn't feel it. But that's the importance of talking about it now. There can be talk about the science behind it. There can be talk about lifestyle shifts and changes. And if it's talked about, as with anything, it becomes normal. And the more normal you can make something that is, in fact, normal, it means that women can be more open and say, today I'm having a bad day, or, this year's been rubbish, or can I just have some help? But yeah, just by talking, and also men understanding. But that's not men's fault. We're not taught in school. So if women don't understand what's happening to our bodies, how on earth are we expecting men to know?
Yeah, and I think, look, there's a high proportion of us men who are spending every day with women.
Yes, yeah,
So
exactly. Even
so
if that's not a partner, sister, mum, whatever it might be.
yeah, so it's important we do know about it. I mean, there's a lot of sort of different sort of language around it. We've got menopause and we've got perimenopause. What's the perimenopause and what's the menopause and
So,
what's all the bits that fits into that?
what even is it? So there's
Yeah.
three terms you're heard. Yeah, exactly. It's just confusing, to be fair. So there's three main terms. You've got perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. Um, if I start in the middle, menopause is when you have not had a period for 12 months. At that point, you are menopausal, which doesn't sound like a very nice term, but that is
Mm.
menopause. Postmenopause is after the menopause. Perimenopause is this new area that's being talked about an awful lot. Perimenopause, the average sort of statistic is showing that it's starting a lot younger now, around sort of late 30s, early 40s, and it can last around 10 years for some women. On average, it's around 8 to 10 years. So that is a huge chunk of life that quite frankly can take up. You can have symptoms the whole way through that. You can have a year of rough symptoms. You might just have a month. Everything is so unique, but perimenopause is talked about more often right now because it's happening younger. We're unsure why. But for most people in their early 40s, or most women in their early 40s, I mean, I'm sort of doing a sort of a big branch here. I happen not to have children, but the vast majority of women in their early 40s will have children, some younger children. Your body's then shifting. There's a lot going on. You're trying to raise children, your body's changing, you don't know what's happening. Then once your periods stop, you're at menopause, and then you're in what some people refer to as sort of postmenopause. So realistically, everyone is postmenopause after their periods have officially stopped, but you've got to have that 12 clear months. Some women go for 11 months, think they're almost there, have a period. That then starts the clock again. You've got to wait for those whole 12 months to be clear. It's essentially about your estrogen levels dropping. Perimenopause is when they start to play around, and then menopause is when we have completely dropped on them.
Okay, so
I'll,
sorry, Claire, go on.
I was say, like, obviously, as you're speaking to women about this change in hormones, are you finding that actually there's almost a little bit of education still that has to be done on hormone levels in normal, regular periods and menstrual cycles? Because I know I'm already talking to, I've got like colleagues and friends that are early 20s, and I'm like, do you actually know what your menstrual cycle is and what the normal is? Because trust me, when it hits you and it starts to change, it's different. So are you finding there's even education for the older women about their menstrual cycle?
Oh, massively. The problem is that we're taught so little at school that all we know is at school, and we can't rely on the generations sort of before us, like our parents, particularly our grandparents. They didn't talk about it. It's taboo. So if you're only going on what you're taught at school, which is a very small section, GPs have a very small training sort of module when they're doing it. There's not that much knowledge out there. You're told that, painful periods are normal. Periods should not be debilitating. You should not be, you feel like you're dying on the floor for days of a month. There's usually an underlying reason for that. Maybe it's polycystic ovaries, endometriosis. And then obviously as the older you get and your hormone levels are changing, they change all throughout your lifetime. There's a really great logic that we're 28 women, sort of different women throughout the month. We're not the same women, not even every week, but even every day. Something is, if our bodies are sort of healthy and working, now mine didn't, unfortunately, but if you're sort of got a healthy cycle, you should be, having something different happen every day. And if you're very lucky to be really in tune with that, logging it down and understanding what that looks like, you know what's happening, but who's got time to do that? I definitely don't. And then who do you talk to about it? It's an absolute minefield. But yeah, most people have very limited knowledge of what's happening, and it's usually through the lens of some very old information.
I don't envy you, Steve. Like actually living with women, we don't understand half the time.
I know. I mean, if we look at there is more information about now for people, but if we look at the internet and Dr. Google, is there a lot of damaging information out there, not a lot of sort of bad information that women and men are sort of picking up about the menopause as well? And where should obviously they should be going to the doctors, but like you say, it's a very small window of learning for GPs, because the clue's in the name. The general practitioners, they've got an awful lot to learn about little bits of everything. So where should they be going in the first instance to get the information about what perimenopause and menopause and everything is about? Because like I say, if you're relying on TikTok or Google, then you're probably not going to get the correct information, or you're going to get a lot of conflicting information on you.
Very much so. I was actually working in a well-known high street health store, and the amount of times that people would come in saying, I've seen this on TikTok, I've seen this on Instagram, this is the product that's going to change my life. And unfortunately, there is a ton of products being aimed at perimenopause and menopause, that it will cure everything. One magical tablet a day will stop your hot flushes and make your brain suddenly be functioning again. And it doesn't exist. TikTok and Instagram, if they're selling you something, I'm a big believer in 9 times out of 10, even if it works, it does not work to the extent it is being told. You only have to have someone sat there in a white coat. And you suddenly believe it. Obviously, GPs are the first place you should go. Realistically, it's quite challenging. A lot of the studies that were done into menopause, particularly around HRTs, some doctors have been retrained on, some have not. It's a postcode lottery as to what you'll be given. It's a postcode lottery as to what you'll be told. But there are menopause clinics in the UK, and I'd highly recommend Googling your local menopause clinic. You won't get your 5-minute appointments. You'll get an hour session where you will be sat down, you'll be looked at sort of holistically. What's your lifestyle like? What's your diet? And I don't mean about losing weight. I mean, what food are you consuming? Because that plays a big part. It's time to actually talk, and that's the biggest thing. A lot of women don't feel, or it's not don't feel, quite frankly, we're not listened to. You just need a few more minutes than that 5-minute slot. That's obviously a whole big thing, and it's not the individual GP's fault, but menopause clinics are amazing because you have that time to sit down, have someone talk through what is the best option for you, with options, not just a one-size-fits-all plan, because it's very unique. Hormones are very individual. So menopause clinics, definitely avoid TikTok and Instagram like the plague when it comes to medical advice. It's probably the best thing I can say without being too rude on certain products.
Are those menopause clinics available on the NHS then, or is that something you've got to go for private?
If you've got private healthcare, wonderful. You'll be seen super quick, great experience. They are available on the NHS. There is a waiting list.
Yeah.
I personally say get in there sooner rather than later. There is no harm going when you think, hang on, I'm only 39, but I've definitely got a couple of perimenopause symptoms. No harm in going at all. You might as well sit on that waiting list for a few months and be seen and be given that time to be spoken to. there are, in an ideal world, we'd all have access to private, and we don't. But it's better to be on that waiting list and know you're getting there. There are online services as well where you can pay for one-to-one services, sort of in a Skype, a Zoom, Teams type environments. But it is nicer, to be fair, if you can sit down and talk to someone and they can understand your lifestyle.
Yeah, I was actually given an amazing bit of advice from a nurse as well. She said, write down all your symptoms, like anything that you're noticing, so that when you actually get that appointment, you can go. And this actually happened to me on Friday. I had an appointment with my endocrinologist for something else, and he was asking, so how are things? And I said, do you mind if I just pull out this list? And he said, no, go for it. And I pulled out my list and I went, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. He said, hang on, let's just go through these. And so I actually had everything down there, and it was brilliant. He listened to everything, and we went through it all, and he's kind of done more blood tests, and we're exploring other options. But yeah, it was that, write things down, because yeah, the brain fog does kick in. So when you're sat there, and as you say, if you've got a limited time, yeah, you can actually cover the topics that you want to, and hopefully get the idea.
It's super stressful, isn't it? You suddenly think, regardless of, menopause, brain fog or not, you're like, I don't know what I was going to say. What on earth happened? I can barely remember what I ate for dinner last night. How on earth am I meant to remember what happened 2 weeks ago? Yeah, writing it down is such a great way of doing it. And what a fantastic experience that he had that time to be able to give to you. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And I say it was because I actually have an endocrinologist for other reasons, that he did have that time. Whereas a GP who I'd given some of those symptoms 12 months previously actually just brushed them off and just went, oh, nothing I can do. So it's a different experience. I will never slag off the NHS, because it is a tool that we are so lucky as a country to have. But as you say, GPs, they have to know everything in very small bits so they can deal with everyone. So
too much.
Yeah.
And as you just mentioned about symptoms, so there's 51 recognised symptoms of menopause now, and all of them, basically bar one, can be written off as something else. So it's not until you usually got 5, 6, 7 symptoms until either you even listen, let alone a doctor. And then, if you say to a doctor, my ear's itching a lot, that's not really, they're like, okay, great for you, but that's a really big symptom to start looking into. But it could be a million things.
Yeah, that was actually the first symptom I went to the doctor with 2.5 years ago. And I was just like, I've got really itchy ears. And she was like, oh, it's the summer, it's allergies. I was like, really? All of a sudden? And then I started delving into it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start writing all this
Here
down
we
now.
go.
Yeah. And I found a couple of, although, as you say, the online doctors are, I often laugh at them, but actually I found a couple of pages on Instagram where it's about the menopause, and it's lots of different things, but actually it's the comment section I go to, because then I find a community that we all are like, oh, well, I've got this, and someone else goes, oh yeah, I've got that too. And actually, as you say, if you can kind of talk to people, and this is obviously what you do with your hiking things, it's just getting a group of people that are experiencing the same thing to talk.
Community is everything. If you are going through it alone, it's 10 times worse. And yeah, I've got this women's walking group that started as a menopause walking group, and it turned out it wasn't a very sexy word saying you were going to a menopause walk. Once I changed it to women's wellness, we suddenly started having people turn up. The first walk was 3 people, all people that I knew, and I was one of the 3. And then when I changed the name, we had 30 people. I was like, right, it's the name. No one wants to tell their family and friends on Facebook they're attending a menopause walk. But I've been really lucky to be sponsored by some amazing companies which have some really good aids for the menopause, and that's encouraged some more people to come along. And it's such a great community. You can hear people talking so openly, even joking. So I completely appreciate some of these women are not outdoorsy people. So, finding the right tree to go for a wee on is like a big deal. And it becomes this like constant, like, sort of community joke where we're sort of going, this bush is great, that tree is great. And a real sort of support for people that wouldn't normally be outside. And we're sort of talking about, like bladder control all of a sudden. And we're talking, like, it's brilliant. These women wouldn't have anywhere else that they could talk so openly. And then we're halfway through a conversation, we're forgetting what's going on. We're like, brain's gone again. And it's brilliant that you can just be open and be like, yeah, we're just falling apart, but we've all got each other. It's okay.
Yeah. I've even had that now, like on the farm. I've had a couple of experiences where there have been so we've had the vets in, and they've been women kind of my sort of age, a little bit older, and it's ended up just talking about our symptoms. And as you say, like bladder control is definitely one of them, as we're all stood
the whole thing
in the farmyard kind of trying to work with cattle, and it's like, do you mind if I go into the barn? You're like, actually go into that one because that's better. And so it's definitely, and then I say I'm way too open sometimes about personal things, but actually, well, that's it. I'm not embarrassed about it anymore. I've had some pretty what people would consider embarrassing accidents, and I'm just like, I live with it now. And actually the fact that I say I'm talking to these 20-year-old girls, I say girls, they are women, but kind of in their lifetime experience of menstrual cycles, I'm talking about this, and they're just like, I've got this to come. And I said, yeah, but actually the fact that I'm telling you now, at least you'll know about it.
It won't be so scary like it was for us.
Yeah, exactly. Or kind of like confusing or worrying that this is happening. I'm hopefully helping you. So yeah,
definitely are. Keep doing it.
Yeah. And do you find now you've changed the name of the group to the Women's Wellness, do you find that you're getting a wider age range as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So we do obviously have people that turn up that are not interested in talking about it at all. And we also have people that turn up that I know full well are there because it's something they're experiencing. They're not ready to talk about it. They just know that they're in a place that can be discussed. I will lead I'll let everyone know at the beginning of a walk, we're here to have a great time. We're going to have a lovely, safe walk. We're going to see this, we're going to see that. I'll drop in some history bits along the way. So even if you're not interested in hormones, it's not a wasted event. I will always drop in. However, I'm trained in this. I'm more than open to talk about this. Come and find me privately, talk about it openly within the group, completely up to you. I just let it flow naturally. And I find that goes really nicely. I'm not allowed to say who, but there's a retailer that are just trialing walk and talks about the menopause, and they've got me on board to do the trial sort of around the country. So big people are looking at doing it now, and that is so exciting because if companies can do it, then that drops down to sort of workforce and to their customers. And I'm so excited to be able to talk to a bigger group of people. It's becoming so mainstream. That's really exciting to me. And I never thought I'd be someone in life who was excited about talking about menopause, but this is where I am now.
We're doing a very good job.
Just love it. Love a hormone.
It's quite interesting, really, because being in the outdoors, I think I'm getting on a bit now. I'm sort of in my mid-50s, but I think when I first started years ago, it was very much a male-dominated industry, wasn't it? The outdoors. And if I remember, years ago going out to the Peak District, whatever, you'd probably see a guy dragging his wife up a hill she didn't want to go up, with her wanting to go back to the car. And I think one thing that Instagram has done for us, really, I think, is it's made the outdoors seem more accessible, because you've got a lot of real sort of strong independent women going out into the hills and blogging about it and doing that as well. How have you found working within the outdoor industry as a woman over the past few years? Has there been a lot of barriers in your way, or has it been okay?
It's been completely mixed. So I work full time in the outdoors now. I've got my group and I freelance as a walk leader for other people. Some places I find I'm literally the only female. I'll get the job list the day before, see all the names. I'm like, right, we are the only female on that job again. And I don't mind that necessarily. There are more men still in the industry. I understand that is a percentage issue. So, and 99% of people I have worked with have been delightful. The article you were referring to that was in the MTA magazine, however, I did get a bit of a backlash and I did receive
Really?
some so positive comments about why on earth do we need this? This is ridiculous, which is the exact reason it's needed, because it's people like that that are unaware it's a topic that needs to be talked about. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, though. So yeah, I have, and on jobs I have received sort of some comments about. So I spend a lot of time away from home. It's not a very feminine job necessarily, and there's been some comments about about oh well, when are you getting home to basically be a housewife, things like
Wow.
that. It's absolutely the smallest percentage. The vast majority have been amazing, and I do think you're right. Things like Instagram have helped dramatically. It's got its downsides, especially when there's lots of beautiful young slim girls with full makeup and hair on top of a mountain, where we all realistically know that they probably, if it's snowed and they've got the train up or they've parked nearby, and
Yeah.
it's not realistic, and it can cause a lot of dangerous situations, with people not being in the right kit in certain places. But ultimately it's definitely encouraged people to know that they have a place there and they can be there. And I see so many more, even if it's not when I'm working, even if it's not on the job I'm on, but when I'm working in an area and I'll see like groups of women, and particularly women's hiking groups I get very excited about. But it's definitely getting there. I'm saying it's a lot more of a sort of fairer playing field now. It's just there's a few dinosaurs still there just saying things that shouldn't be said, but yeah, they're not as many as there used to be. Definitely there's been a shift. It's nice.
The Long Haul podcast is brought to you with Pilgrim Journey. It's not just gear, it's the force that fuels your drive and the spark that ignites your will. So if you've got some great gear and backpacks, head over to pilgrim-journey.com. It is crazy, isn't it, when you put an article out like that? There's so much whataboutery, isn't it? It's like, because you're talking about this, then you're decrying all the men in the world because you're talking about this. And I had a guy on a few weeks ago who was talking about the andropause, and he's just written a book about that. And he got so much backlash from women for writing that book as well. And it's just crazy that people think it's the zero sum game, that if you're talking about one thing, then you're saying everything else is rubbish. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just the downside of the internet, I suppose, isn't it?
Exactly. I don't hate men. I just want to raise awareness for women. Why can't
Exactly.
both coexist nicely? But yeah, at least it gets the message out. The only other thing I have found is, if I'm leading walks particularly, I will get the odd man who will tell me I don't know the route I'm going down, and they can read a map better than myself, obviously. But it's the smallest percentage. I'm pretty lucky overall, and every employer I've worked for has been amazing so far, touch wood.
Have you found that any of that kind of negativity has kind of lit a bit of a fire in you as well? Yeah.
Obviously I'm professional when it happens. I think my eyeball twitches a little bit. But I smile through it, and I get home and I have like a 5-minute whinge about it and just like vent, and then I'm like, no, I can do bigger, I can do better, and then I go and do bigger and better. So I will do the harder routes on things, or I'll take myself off backpacking on my own just to prove a point, but which works really well in my favor because I'm learning new skills all the time. So
yeah,
I'm doing it for myself, but every now and again there is a bit of stubbornness, I'm not going to lie.
Oh yes, I know that well.
A bit of a middle finger. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Are there many cultural differences in the women you take out as regards their attitudes towards menopause? Because obviously, I think there are some cultures that talk about it quite freely, and there are other areas whereby it's taboo, and they probably wouldn't talk about anything to do with any sort of hormones or women's sexual health or anything like that.
Massively, obviously, big generalization, but overall, and obviously it depends how many generations down this is, but overall, sort of African, Caribbean, Indian women definitely struggle to talk about it an awful lot more. I married into a sort of South American but sort of Caribbean family, and I know just from personal experience that the women will not talk about personal issues. it's taboo, it's a private thing. But if you hurt your hand, you say, oh, I've broke my finger. There is no harm in saying, I have a issue with my periods. It's a bodily function, but there is a massive issue. I know in some countries and cultures, there's not even a word for the menopause. It's not discussed. And when I was working as a menopause advisor, the people that I found that were struggling the most, and what I would say is oftentimes bringing their husbands along for support. So that's so nice to see that, the generations are changing. They truly, it's not just that they needed sort of, handheld and to be told it was okay. They genuinely didn't know what was happening with their body. Not only like how I might not know, but it's just it was a term that didn't exist. It was a stage of life that they never knew was going to happen. We have very old-fashioned words like going through the change. I remember my grandma talking about the change and women of a certain age, and I cannot stand all of those terms. But at least we had a vibe. We knew something was going to be coming, but there's some women in some cultures that have no clue, and hits them like a ton of bricks. So yeah, culturally there is definitely some issues that have to be sort of looked at more sensitively, talked about with different wording or less open, talk around it a little bit. But yeah, it's changing bit by bit, which is nice. But yeah, there is definitely cultural issues to take into account, sadly.
Great. Sorry, go on.
Yeah,
we've got to get used to this podcast.
What would be, I suppose, your your approach in trying to get more people of the diverse cultural backgrounds actually just out walking into your group, do you think? Is it something that you're exploring? Because obviously it is still very sensitive.
Yeah, no, very much so. And that's a whole topic in itself, is people from different backgrounds being in the outdoors. We're all white here. You'll notice that when you look at the outdoors, it's a very white arena. And that can be really off-putting for some people. There's amazing groups like Muslim Hikers, Black Girls Hike, and you only have to look on the comments online to see some of the disgusting things that is said. Muslim Hikers made the news recently because I had death threats put on Instagram from going on a walk. Vile, absolutely vile. And I'm working with them very soon. I work with my local African Caribbean Association to try and get people out and about. So even just getting people from different cultures out walking can be a whole separate thing, let alone then being able to talk about the menopause. And that's for a whole variety of reasons, be it that, when families first came over to this country, they were working so hard, they might not have had time, they might not have lived in green spaces. You drop a few generations down, it's maybe not seen as a place that someone feels comfortable. If everyone's white, you might not feel comfortable. So that's why these groups are so important and incredible places for people to sort of learn to be in the outdoors and to feel, secure and comfortable and supported. But when I'm quite lucky, whilst I live in Kent, it's not the most diverse area. My group has got a really lovely mix of people in, and I work very hard to make sure that stays like that. And we reach out to as many different people as we can from as many different communities, and working with local communities as well to let them know I'm here. And I've worked with the council recently, which allowed me to do a lot of work for free for the end user, which encouraged more people putting walks on from train stations as opposed to meeting in the middle of nowhere, just trying to break some barriers down where possible, being able to provide kit. I apply for as many sort of grants as I can with the aim to sort of be able to provide backpacking kit, or even just sit mats, anything at all. So there's a lot of work to be done with that, and it's a big topic. But yeah, I'm trying as much as I can, and if not, I can definitely recommend some amazing groups for people.
Are you seeing any sort of referrals into the outdoors now from the NHS? Because I know there was a lot of talk a while back about sort of referring people into gyms and getting them out and about and doing things. And I was just wondering if the NHS or GPs are doing any sort of work into getting people out into nature now. Is that a thing? Is it something we still need to work on? Because there's a lot of benefits, isn't there? The mental health benefits of being out in the outdoors are are just immense. You know, I can't imagine doing anything other when I'm feeling a bit shit, really, than sort of getting outdoors and getting into nature. That's going to make me feel any better.
Nothing gives you that. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I've sprained my ankle. I've had one day so far of rest. I'm miserable. I've been sat at my desk. It's just, and there's science now. Science is now showing, that trees, have pheromones coming out of them that make us feel certain ways and can help prevent certain diseases. It's not just, the lovely old tree hugging hippies that we used to be called. Nature really is good for you. I've not had anyone directly been prescribed it, because there was it's in the news a few years ago, wasn't it, that they were going to prescribe nature. I never know what actually came of that, and I know in certain countries like Japan they do, and it's been so successful. They prescribe forest bathing, which, if no one listening has ever done, highly recommend. Makes you feel very relaxed. But whilst I've not had anyone directly come through that, I've actually had in my local area, I know there are 2 GPs that have recommended the group. And that could just be on a personal note or through from a fitness point of view, and I'm unsure which it is. But I know at the very least, word is sort of slowly getting out that at the very least, talking is a good thing. I don't know if they're coming at it from a nature point of view. I'd love to think they were. And definitely we need a bit more research in that, and the NHS to catch up on that, because it's free. It's as good as free to be outdoors. I always say walking is free and hiking is expensive, but you can go up into your local woodland and walk in your trainers for free, and you just can't beat, in my opinion, being around some trees.
Do you find people talk more out on the walk than they probably would if you were sat down in a cafe with them? Because for many years I've sort of trained managers and trained leaders in business, and there was a big thing about everybody must have a one-to-one every month. And the way I used to teach that was that you don't do it in an office. You go out for a walk, especially with I'm trying not to bring too much guy stuff into, but especially with guys, because guys sort of facing each other. Just don't talk to each other, because if guys are sort of eye to eye with each other, they probably want to fight each other at some point. But if you're walking along side by side, you'll tend to get more out of people. Is that something you find out on your walks as well?
Yeah, so we have a mixed hiking group as well. So we do allow men along, but it's the same for women as well. That direct eye contact can be quite intimidating. I find walking side by side, especially if it's an all-day walk. I do tiny walks for an hour here or there, and then we do big boy walks. And on those days, you can know someone's life story by the end of it. You have shared more than you will share with your best friend, then quite frankly with, your therapist. There is something so freeing about just being able to walk, sort of let everything off your chest. And by the end of it, this person knows everything about you, and you might never see them again. And that's an amazing experience. And they get to talk. Everyone's gone through some trauma of some sort, unfortunately, by the time we get to our age. And when you're sort of talking about these things, it flows so freely. Side by side has no intimidation in it at all. You often find it's not even just side by side, it's someone from behind going, oh, I know about that. Everyone's sort of listening into other people's conversations, ready to jump in. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. And I know that there are therapists that do their counselling sessions walking. So yeah, meetings is a great idea, but if you can get people outside for actual therapy, that's the sweet spot. That would work amazingly.
How does that work in your area? Claire works with a quite a large charity, armed forces and military charity, the Pilgrim Bandits. Do you guys do a lot of sort of walking and talking like that when you sort of out as well? And have you got a good mix of sort of men and women in that group now, or is it mainly just guys?
It's still mainly just guys, but they there's definitely, when you're actually out on the path, there's a lot of chat going on, and you can see that everyone is much more willing to be open about things. And especially I've found that, as I say, I've joined this charity, not a veteran myself, so I don't have that personal experience that would bond me with these guys. But then when I'm walking with them, that's when I find that if I am going to delve deeper into their experience, then that's when it happens. But yeah, it's definitely, say, walking and talking. And I know they do a couple of walk and talks in London for some of the guys. They get together once a week, and it is about just offloading. And you don't have to say anything sometimes. As you say, walking side by side with someone is sometimes just enough peace in itself.
There's a comfort in it, isn't there? If someone is literally there, you don't always need to speak. And even that, that is just as powerful, 100%.
Yeah.
And Jenn, are you finding more workplaces getting involved in this? Because I know you mentioned before that you've got a couple of workplaces sort of doing things, but are more workplaces, because there's sort of the walking networking groups and that type of thing now as well. Is there more of that happening, or is it all individuals coming to you?
There is now companies coming, which is great. And obviously, I'm assuming that once one or two start going a bit more public, then that's going to hopefully lead to some more companies. But I've been speaking to a few different places, some offices, just your standard 9 to 5ers, and some sort of big companies with like retail shops on the high street. Quite frankly, it works both ways. Not only is it a very cheap thing for them to put on, in comparison to some other events they can do, the results are just brilliant. Employees feel that they're being listened to. They get some time out of the office. Everyone wins. It's an absolute win-win. If you feel your employer is listening to you, looking after you, you're probably gonna stay in the job longer. You might work a little bit harder. Everyone is benefiting from it. I'm hoping that, especially in coming years, it will definitely grow. When I was working as a menopause advisor, I actually had a gentleman come in. His team were all female and all going through the menopause, and he was just confused as anything, bless him. And he just wanted to sit down and talk to me for an hour and say, "What do I do? How can I help?" So yeah, I think there's a shift happening. A lot of places now have menopause forums at work, and they have larger companies, admittedly, have maybe one like advocate or advisor. And that's looking quite nice. I know one sort of large company in particular have got menopause advisors where you can have up to an hour a month, one-to-one, which is incredible service. So hopefully, bit by bit, we'll start to see it trickle down. Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
is there any? Sorry, Clay, go.
I've heard that there are companies now that are actually allowing women. It sounds like it slightly gets my back up when I say allowing women, but a more understanding towards women around their menstrual cycle. And if someone needs to work from home or even have a sick day once a month, I now I'm starting to see that is part and parcel of the package. And it is great to see that now actually employers are looking to be that empathetic towards the menopause, and
100%.
They're slightly more.
I mean, you get some companies you join, you get X amount of days that you're allowed off in a year or in a quarter, and if you go over that, it's investigated, isn't it? And it's looked into as some sort of you're sort of given some sort of warning. As a woman, unfortunately, you are going to be prone to some more things, whatever that might be for you at whatever age or whatever stage you're at. Just even being told that, if you take a day off, if you come in late because of that, we're not trying to be lazy. We'll work the difference. It just might not be that in the morning's our best time. We might be working better later at night. If there's that flexibility, if you know you're not going to be given a warning for it, the difference that can make. You don't need the anxiety and the stress of your employer on top of what you're feeling as well. Yeah, it's really nice to see. I'm excited. I hopefully give it another 10 years, give it sort of a little half a generation jump, and it's going to be, it should be looking great for the next ones.
I think hopefully, I mean, there are some workplaces out there now which are really sort of progressive with the health and wellness. I worked for a business a couple of years ago, and one of the first things I did when I went in, I said to everybody, look, if you want to go to the gym, you want to go for a run in your lunchtime, don't worry about being back in an hour. Come back when you finish, get a shower, get back in. It doesn't really matter. And the backlash I had off that initially from the older managers was like, but if they're half an hour late, well, the work's not. I said the work will still get done. And it did, and we didn't have that as well. And I think it's if you look at the menopause as well, I think a lot of the focus around businesses looking after the menopause has come from the fact that people have had to go through the hardship of taking businesses to tribunals in the past because they've been treated so badly as regards that. And I think, I've recently just worked for a business, and I lasted there for 2 months actually, and I've never worked for a more misogynistic and old style business in my life. And it was like, I don't know if you've ever seen the program Mad Men, but it was like that. It was awful. And I lasted 2 months, and I was like, I'm out of here. I'm gone. I can't work in this place. But yeah, I think businesses always lead the way, don't they, with and employers with how things come out into modern culture, and how we treat people, really. And I think there needs to be a lot more of I think it's the smaller businesses now as well. The smaller old-fashioned businesses need to start looking at their employees' wellness, and whether it's the menopause or whether it's just health and fitness, and putting a bit more investment into that.
Yeah, I mean, most people are still stuck at their desks, aren't they? They're not even allowed to leave their desk. So, it all ties in. Hopefully, it will change soon. But yeah, if the big companies can start, then it will trickle down. And then we can just cross our fingers.
Jenn, it's been lovely speaking to you. Claire, have you got any more questions for Jenn? Or
I don't know whether you'd want to divulge this, but are there kind of, let's say, 3 top tips you'd give to a woman who's actually thinking that they're entering perimenopause, kind of whether it's lifestyle or anything else?
So there's like a whole load of factors. In terms of symptoms, everyone talks about hot flushes. A lot of people get them, but there's other factors as well. Sorry for being really open. Libido is one of the biggest ones. And that's obviously what can cause issues in marriages and in long-term partnerships, any partnership, quite frankly. If you feel like that is getting in the way, definitely speak to a doctor at that point. I feel like that's one of the first things. That's when your hormones shifting, your brain's not quite wiring like how it used to. Diet is now being shown to have a massive impact. And I don't mean dieting, I don't mean losing weight, but a lot of us will complain about our body shape changing. We're eating the same amount or less, we're moving more, and suddenly weight is all over the place, usually sort of in a pouch on our bellies, and it just won't move. There's a lot of science showing that increased fiber, increased protein is making a world of difference. And sadly, things that we love, like caffeine and maybe red and white wine, aren't doing great for that. So it's finding like a balance. And obviously the menopause clinics will definitely be able to help. I do think reaching out, I do think talking is the big one. As soon as you notice things aren't quite right. Also advocating for yourself. That's my big one. You're not always going to be helped along. If you are someone who's struggling a lot, not taking no for an answer. You might have to see a different doctor. You might have to speak up a bit louder. You might have to talk about uncomfortable things like libido, or gaining excess body hair, or losing your head hair, or growing a beard all of a sudden. Like
getting itchy.
Getting really itchy. Itchy ears. Thousands of these things are just happening. A lot of people don't want to say, my breasts are really tender today. But starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about talking about uncomfortable things. And like you said, maybe writing it down if you're not comfortable, even if it's just showing someone it. Knowing that you're not going crazy, that you just need an outlet, be that a GP, a kind friend, whatever it may be, making notes about what's going on and doing a bit of research on some good websites. Even the NHS website has got the list of the symptoms. And most importantly, when things change and a lot of people suffer with anxiety and body image issues, there's just to know that you're not going crazy, quite frankly, and that there's a lot of people in the same boat that are desperate to talk about it just as much as you are.
Brilliant. Jenn, so if people are looking to sort of get out in the outdoors and talk about this, and they're in your area or in any other area, how can they contact you? And is there a network of Jenns throughout the country that they can sort of contact if they live
I'm
somewhere
working
else?
on that network. So yes, if you're in the southeast, be that Kent, Surrey, Sussex, Essex, Instagram, Facebook, MJ Outdoor Adventures. And to be fair, and if anyone wants to reach out and just talk as well, it doesn't have to be come along for a walk. The inbox is always open for people to ask any embarrassing question about any part of their body that they may wish to. I'm working on a network actually, and there are groups. I don't want to recommend them yet because I've just not been on walks with them, but your simple Google searches Eventbrite will bring them up. And I've had some conversations with some of these women, and they sound like they're starting some amazing groups. Not always from they're trained in hormones perspective, but it could be that they're trained in mental health, or I mentioned forest bathing, they might be trained in that. Different perspectives, but coming at it from the same point of view of needing to get women together and create a sort of supportive network.
That's brilliant. And I will put the details in the show notes as well. And I have a couple of ideas for people who might be able to help you with that network as well. There was a couple of people I was on my HML course with, so who were doing some really great work up in the Peak District. So I'll drop you their details across as well, and maybe you can catch up with them. That'd be good.
Thank you. That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Not a problem. Great. Look, thanks very much, Jenn. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Keep us updated of any sort of walks you've got on. I'll publicise them on the podcast and on the Facebook page that you've got coming up as well. And yeah, I think what you're doing is really good. And I loved speaking to you.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Much appreciated.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
May the truth be told, I was down bad, now I got it on go. Finna count my dough till my thumb got slit. Put my neck on glitz, put my name on the list. Finna shine on the drum. From the bay, been player one, way too clean. I was born this way, this my DNA. I was EBT, now the bread on the way was to